So we'll start with Zimbabwe, and the opposition leader has said President Emerson Mnangagwa, try saying that if you're drunk, election victory is a coup against the people's will, and Nelson Chamisa repeated his claim that the results announced late last Thursday were all fake, and said he had won the Monday's presidential poll. Responding, Mr. Mnangagwa called for peace, but said people were free to challenge the result in court. And this was actually the first election in Zimbabwe since long-term leader Robert Mugabe was ousted. But this, in reality, is another victory for Zimbabwe and for the world. Mnangagwa is for the people, protesting against joining the Commonwealth and also the Rothschilds' plan to steal all the in-ground resources of that country. So this person needs to be supported. You're seeing a lot of it around the world. Venezuela's another one. I'll cover that later. But Sharamba, who's the one who's complaining about the result, was a Rothschild's choice and had already made deals, a bit like Hillary Clinton, signed away all Americans' in-ground resources, only to lose a one-horse race. Oops. So all those deals got cancelled. So we'll see what happens next with Zimbabwe, but expect that country to be in the news quite a bit with Venezuela. And also this next one, it's linked to Zimbabwe in a roundabout way. And medical teams in the Democratic Republic of Congo once again hope to use, according to them anyway, an experimental vaccine to prevent the latest outbreak of Ebola becoming an epidemic. Now, preliminary testing suggests that the strain of Ebola has emerged is known as Zaire, of all the names to pick. For those of you with long memories, Zaire is the original name of the Republic of the Congo. It's a bit like Rhodesia. Zimbabwe was originally called Rhodesia. Funny how they all change the names and think everyone forgets. It's a bit like Belgium being formerly Holland. This alleged recent strain has appeared in another province 1,550 miles away, in which the experimental vaccine had been successfully used. It depends on what terminology you're calling successful, in my opinion. But they're stating that the strain is the most deadly type of Ebola and carrying a mortality rate of 50%. This is more clowning around by the clowns, and is linked to Zimbabwe because the people at the top end of the Republic of Congo are not playing Rothschild's games either. And neither is Venezuela, and neither is another other countries. So watch those two. Hello, NYPD. Perhaps you should follow this police department in Massachusetts. The entire police department of a small Massachusetts town resigned last Monday, saying town officials have failed to address their concerns about low pay and unsafe equipment. Now, all the members of the Blandford Police Department made the decision to resign last Friday after alerting town officials multiple times about unsafe working conditions. And according to the former interim police chief, Mrs. Roberta Sarnacki, it became more and more apparent how dangerous the situation was, and the enormity of it all kicked in on Friday, and they all walked out. Like I said, NYPD follow their lead until they cough up and produce that video on national TV. So I hope all the police forces are supporting those cops in Massachusetts. They need to get together, and they need to get together rather quickly, I might add. Where are we next? Norway. I posted, it's rare I do a post, but I posted something about the child abuse, sexual trafficking and all kinds going on in Norway. And it's funny that the UN rates Norway as one of the best countries for a child to grow up in, really. And yet so many children, according to a large number of Norwegian experts, are taken into care without good reason. Now, the conviction of a top psychiatrist in the child protection system for downloading child abuse images is now raising further serious questions. This is a carbon copy that I've mentioned before of what happens in the UK, where social workers are being paid outside of the social services system, even though they work in it, are being paid, from what I gather, £20,000, which is roughly $28,000, to remove children from homes, whether those homes are good, bad, or neutral. Doesn't matter. They target, given a target child, and the child is removed and put into care. And what happens next is the parents have no say in it. They get rushed into a private court where the parents or a lawyer cannot represent. And within a week, those children are pushed into foster cares, which are all part of the sexual and child trafficking group. It has to be stopped. So Norway is another one that needs to be dealt with. Where are we next? President Donald Trump's media attacks raised the risk of violence against journalists, according to UN experts. I didn't realise there was any. And in a statement, David Kay and Edison Lanza, wasn't that the same name as the family from Sandy Hook? Of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, called the attacks strategic, and they said it undermined press freedom and verifiable facts. Really? And the comments follow hours after Mr. Trump's daughter Ivanka distanced herself from her father's attacks, and Trump has repeatedly criticised the media before and during his presidency. He declared journalists to be enemies of the people, which has drawn condemnation across the political spectrum. Well, it's fairly simple, isn't it? You start telling the truth, or we call you fake. It's as simple as that. So if you don't like Trump calling you fake news, stop reading fake news. It's that simple. That's why all your ratings are plummeting, because no one's buying the cabal agency script anymore that you're all reading. Doesn't matter which town, county or state you're in, they're all reading the same script. And it's all fake. So if you don't want to be called out fake, stop reading it. Fairly simple. Tide's turned. No one's listening to you anymore. So kudos to Trump for calling them out, because us in the alternative media have been calling them out for many years. Where are we next? First Lady Melania Trump. Her office is operating without a policy director currently. Reagan Hedlund, who was hired for the job by Trump in January, recently departed the First Lady's team, according to a source with knowledge on the East Wing staffing change. Hedlund came to Trump's office from National Security Council, where she was an executive assistant. Prior to that, she served as policy and communications advisor to Mike Pompeo when he was a Republican member of the House of Representatives from Kansas, before his roles as CIA Director and Secretary of State. She is no longer with the office, and we wish her the best, according to Trump's communications director, Stephanie Grisham. Seems very quietly they're all being pushed out. It is increasing. Story that broke this week, and I have further news for Mr. Obama in the intel. TikTok. But since April of 2016, Obama's campaign organization has paid nearly $1 million to the law firm that funneled money to Fusion GPS. We've covered that particular group a number of times. And that money was to compile a dossier for unverified allegations against Trump. So in other words, just make stuff up. And the former President Barack Obama's official campaign organization has directed nearly $1 million to the same law firm. And this is the firm behind the infamous Steele dossier. Mr. Steele, not Robert David Steele, although he's part of the clowns. But Christopher Steele. But Obama's group has paid $972,000 to Perkins Coie, spelt C-O-I-E, and records filed with the Federal Election Commission show that Perkins Coie, an international law firm, was directed by both the Democratic National Committee and also by Hillary Clinton's campaign to retain Fusion GPS in April of 2016, which was all designed to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. From there, Fusion GPS then hired Christopher Steele, who was a former British spy, to compile a dossier of allegation that Trump and his campaign actively colluded with the Russian government during the 2016 election. I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of reading about Russian collusion. It's all BS. Although many of the claims in the dossier have been refuted, none of the dossier's allegations of collusion have been independently verified. Like I said, they just make stuff up and throw it at the wall and hope some sticks. Now, lawyers for Steele admitted in court filings last April that his work was not verified and was never meant to be made public. Really? And it just keeps on rolling. Republican, another one bites the dust. Chris Collins, this time from New York, has been arrested on insider trading charges lodged by the Justice Department law enforcement officials last Wednesday. And the indictment obtained from a federal grand jury, interesting, I'll say that again, from a federal grand jury, also charges Collins' son, Cameron Collins, as well as the father of his fiancée, Stephen Zarsky. And in June 2017, Collins passed non-public information about Innate's drug trial results to his son in order to help him make timely trades in Innate stock, INNATE, and also tip others that the indictment alleges. Now, the indictment obtained from the federal grand jury relates to the Australian biotech company Innate Immunotherapeutics, on which Collins served as a board member, go figure. And it alleges Collins, 68, scrambled to call his son from the White House lawn and tell him non-public information about a failed drug trial in which they both owned shares. So, he's been charged, as well as his son and the father of his fiancée, according to the court filing. Now, the father of the missing 3-year-old who was arrested on a New Mexico compound this week was linked to extremist Muslims. This is the Muslim Brotherhood goons, Obama's group. And they were training children to commit school shootings. This has been revealed in the court documents that were filed on Wednesday. And the prosecutors alleged that Mr. Wahaj, who's 39, was conducting weapons training on the compound where 11 children were found hungry and living in squalor. They asked Wahaj, who appeared in court on Wednesday, and he was held without bail. Now, the makeshift compound, located near the Colorado border, was found shielded by old tyres, wooden pallets and other debris. And upon authorities' arrival, Wahaj was heavily armed with an AR-15 rifle and 5 loaded 30-round magazines. Also 4 loaded pistols, including one in his pocket when he was taken down. And the sheriff said the children aged 1 to 15 looked like third world refugees, not only with no food or fresh water, but with no shoes, personal hygiene, and basically dirty rags for clothing. This is why the issue of the wall. These are coming up from the south. And you're just collecting children willy-nilly and then training them to do school shootings. Now you understand why there's so many school shootings. Where are we next? I'll wait for time. Okay. Paul Manafort, big trial going on. And prosecutors are using the IRS agent Michael Welsh to state clearly what they argued in the opening statements and have witnesses testify on for several days now. And what became clear is Paul Manafort did not pay taxes on all of the income he earned in, wait for it, the Ukraine. Remember us talking about the fun and games in Ukraine and the Nazis creating havoc? Well, there you go. Ukraine, the income earned between 2010 and 2014. Welsh said Manafort received about $15.5 million from Ukraine, which he then paid directly to vendors and which he did not report or pay taxes on. And the money never entered Manafort's business or personal accounts in the United States, according to the IRS agent, Mr. Welsh. He also falsely classified another $1.5 million in income as a loan, and the FBI accountant testified earlier Wednesday that more than $60 million flowed through Manafort's overseas accounts between 2010 and 2014, and he spent $15 million of that on homes, clothes and other personal purchases. And Welsh said he also looked at the income that was never brought into the United States, and he said he had a conservative estimate in what he allowed as possible business expenses, including €132,000 to a yacht company, $49,000 for an Italian villa rental, and $45,000 for cosmetic dentistry. Did he pay for Corey's wife's teeth as well? $45,000. Oh my God. And $19,800 for a riding academy, really. And he also testified that Manafort had $16.4 million in unreported income, and the IRS agent said that the tax returns Manafort filed in those years were also false, but he didn't indicate he had foreign bank accounts. So that boy's in trouble. Here's a good news story that applies to Wells Fargo, as in what the group. Hundreds of people had their homes foreclosed on because software used by Wells Fargo incorrectly denied them mortgage modifications. This could really set the cat amongst the pigeons for those who got foreclosed on, because I went through it. I asked for a mortgage modification, which they denied 3 times. and it's deliberate to take the home off you. Anyway, Wells Fargo revealed the issue in a regulatory filing this week and said it has set aside $8 million to compensate customers affected by the glitch, as they call it. And they said the computer error, affected certain accounts that were undergoing the foreclosure process between April 2010 and October 2015. Also of note in that article is this line. The same filing also disclosed that Wells Fargo is facing formal or informal inquiries or investigations from, take note, an unnamed government agency over how the company purchased federal low-income housing tax credits. Wells Fargo is in a lot of trouble. Take note of the unnamed government agency. That may come up a lot. Chicago, oh dear, often known as Gangster City, home of Obama and his merry team of gangsters up there, but it's completely out of control up there now. And 77 people were shot just last week alone in Chicago. 9 fatally. But the rate of shootings has accelerated as reports of 30 shot in 3 hours is the most shot in the least amount of time in recorded history in Chicago. Well, the previous record was 29 in 6 hours. This is 30 in 3. And people in Chicago are now calling for Obama's fellow gangster puppet, Rahm Emanuel, to be fired, citing a lack of urban development in the poorest sections of the city. But to me, it seems like what we've highlighted before, like other major cities in America, they are pricing people out altogether. And Chicago is another example. All the money is going into the north end of the town, as I understand it, and the east and the south, if memory serves me correctly, are just being left in squalor. But the people with guns there have to be better than what they are. Most of it's drug and crime related, and that needs to be fixed. Saudi Arabia has now decided to expel the Canadian ambassador, not a surprise, and has frozen trade ties with the nation after a rupture of relations over Canada's interference in the internal affairs of the Islamic Kingdom. Mr. Trudeau is stepping on toes and people are fighting back. In a series of tweets on August the 5th, the Saudi Arabia Foreign Ministry declared that they were expelling the Canadian ambassador Denis Horak and were recalling its own envoy in Canada as well. The kingdom has also frozen all new trade and investment transactions between the two nations, and they went on to say, we consider the Canadian ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia persona non grata and ordered him to leave within the next 24 hours. That's going to get interesting. Right, we're going to have one more piece, and then we're going to go into a music break, and then we're going to have some intel. But plans that have been revealed today for an American Space Force branch to be rolled out by 2020. Interesting timing that, methinks. 2020. Trump has called for a separate but equal Space Force and a complicated and more expensive move that requires congressional approval. Now that's different to what's currently, because there is no congressional approval over the SSP, or NASA for that matter. On Thursday, Mike Pence said that the administration will work with Congress on the plan and will outline a budget next year. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has endorsed steps to reorganize the military's space warfighting forces and create a new command, but has previously opposed launching a pricey new service. A new branch of the military would require layers of bureaucracy. Not really. That needs to be streamed right back. Military and civilian leaders, uniforms, equipment, and an expansive support structure. No, it's already there. Maybe some people aren't aware, but most of it's already there. Now, the interesting aspect of it, take note, read between the lines. The Pentagon proposal delivered to Congress Thursday lays out plans to consolidate the Pentagon's warfighting space forces and make organizational changes to boost the acquisition and development of leading-edge technologies. The Pentagon's role in space has been under scrutiny because of a recognition that the United States is increasingly reliant on satellites that are difficult to protect in space. Well, they're difficult if you don't put rogue satellites in space and play games with them. Some people wouldn't decide to take them out, would they? Again, it's like the media, fake news. If you tell the truth, people are happy. If you use satellites against humans in a rogue way, you're going to have them removed. And many of them have been removed. And if you keep putting them up, we'll keep taking them down. Fairly simple. Right, we're going to have a couple of songs now, and shall we have one? No, we'll just have one. We're only 40 minutes in. We'll have one song, and this is Muse and Uprising. There's uprisings happening in many countries now. Good stuff.